we want to start out with, where did you grow up? What sports were you playing? Where'd you go to college?
Sure. So I grew up in a small town in northern New Jersey called Emerson, which is just outside of New York City. So I was a three-sport guy in Emerson: football, wrestling, and track and field. I was a shot discus thrower. Then we moved on to college at Stanford on the West Coast, where I stuck with football and also track and field through the shot and disc. Left wrestling behind. That was the toughest one. That was the toughest one out of three. So we dropped that one in college and stuck with football and track. And then when I was done with my college eligibility for the last little bit, the last part of my college days, I played a little bit of rugby.
Cool. So what were you studying in college?
So I was an undergrad in economics and a master's in organizational behavior, which is in sociology.
Oh, okay, cool. So like when it comes to NASCAR, you said New Jersey, there's only one driver right now from New Jersey in NASCAR, and that's Martin Truex. And then
Yep.
you moved out to California, and obviously there's, the Jimmy Johnsons, Kyle Larsons, other guys out there. Did you grow up a NASCAR fan, or is this something that you kind of grew into?
No, it was really when I was done with school and done with sports. I was actually recovering from back surgery. So I was out near school, and during my recovery, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life, I did not want to put on the dreaded suit and tie and get into the management training program at, whatever company. So I just started looking around for other things. And it was actually when I was recovering and laid out watching TV that I saw a NASCAR race and kind of stumbled into NASCAR, and I saw a pit stop, and to me it looked like a football play. And so I thought maybe that's a place where I can continue this athletic, team-oriented kind of life.
So are the stories that we hear about you sneaking into Sears Point and Sonoma, is there validity to those, and how you got into NASCAR that way?
That was it. Technically, I started my career by breaking the law. I snuck in and started asking teams if they needed help, and I found a team willing to let me help out for the weekend.
Awesome.
What team is that?
So that's a team that doesn't exist anymore. That's Bob Whitcomb Racing, the number 10 car. Purelator was the sponsor, and Derek Cope was the driver. They actually had some success with Buddy Parrott as their crew chief. They won the Daytona 500, and then also came back and won Dover the year before. So that would be 1990. Now, you guys know NASCAR lore pretty well. So Derek Cope won the 500. That's the one that Earnhardt spun out or cut a tire, or whatever it was, like coming out of turn 4 when he almost won it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was 1990. So he didn't, and the guy that was running second at that time was Derek Cope, and Derek Cope won the 500.
Yeah, hey, that's the right place at the right time if I've ever heard
Yeah,
of it.
you're not kidding. And then, and then they backed that up. They won Dover, which is, that was a 500-mile race back then. So that was a tough one. So they certainly had some good things going back then as a team.
So you landed the job with Hendrick in 1992. Did you work for any other teams before that? And how on earth did you land a job at Hendrick?
Yeah, so I did. So I actually volunteered. So I followed those contacts out from California to North Carolina. I volunteered at Whitcomb Racing. Then they hired me. It was like $300 a week, which I was thrilled about because I could pay my rent and all that stuff. So it was good. Funds were dwindling. So hired at Whitcomb. So that was my first job. Then when I was released at Whitcomb because of, crew chief change. So just like, the new head coach comes in, brings his guys in, that kind of a thing. So was released at Whitcomb, and then got a job at Alan Koicke Racing. So I was Alan's jackman, and that was in 92, the beginning of 92. That was the year that Alan won the championship, but I was not there because I left in August to take the job at Hendrick.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I was, and so I've won races in a Ford uniform. I've got the proof.
So were you actually there that day in Atlanta when Alan won and it was Jeff's first race?
Yes, right. So the reason why I was hired in August was because Hendrick and Ray Everham was the crew chief, of course, for Jeff. Ray was putting together the team. They were going to do that last race in '92 to get ready for the first full season with Jeff in '93. So that's August. The race would have been in November. So we were, getting the pit crews together. They were getting the cars together, getting the shop processes all organized. And that was kind of our first official race, was that last race. So it was Richard Petty's last race. Kawicki won, of course, beat Bill Elliott with that, having the most laps. So by one criteria, 1 point. And that was our first race.
And you were hired on, your title was pit crew coach or coordinator. This wasn't a thing at this point, right?
Right. There was no such thing back then. So there really wasn't a title, but that's what I did. I was hired in to coach the pit crew. And now, of course, I worked in the shop and had to do some, kind of like assistant to the mechanics and really a lot of cleaning up and sweeping floors and all that stuff to make up for the other part of my job. Because back then, if you didn't put your hands on a race car, there was no need for you to be hired in a race shop. The business offices and all that sort of stuff was really separate. But as far as like being on the team, you were building and maintaining and fabricating on race cars. And my main focus was the pit crew. But yet I had to do some of those other things. Again, I'm not a fabricator. And so I was like assistant to some of those types of functions.
Yeah, that just shows that no matter what level of the sport you're at, you're having to cut your teeth to get to where you want to be.
Yeah. Right. And floor sweeper, listen, I'm proud, right? There's a whole hillside of bushes that flourishes to this day because of my gardening skills and watering skills when they first went in the ground.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, you mentioned the cutting your teeth and everything and finding new ways to do things and how you saw the pit stop as this NFL type thing. And I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw this quote that said, you can't train an engineer to be an athlete, but you can train an athlete to be an engineer. And you kind of took that approach of taking athletes and training them to do these more technical aspects of the pit stop. What made you in your head say, I can change the way that something has been done for years and years and years and years?
Sure. Well, really, I guess you can say that my greatest value was that I really didn't know that much about NASCAR. So when I saw a pit stop, it looked like a football play. And so the ideas of practice and repetition and the training and the way that the positions needed to be coordinated. I was an offensive lineman, so there was a lot of coordination amongst the linemen to make the line function and to work and to, get all your blocking assignments and so forth. And I saw it in a very similar way. So it wasn't so much about, I think I could come in here and change anything. It was just a thought of, I think this is the way we need to train for this activity. Mm-hmm. I was put in charge. I was the coach of the team, and it just made sense to me. And the fancy term is paradigm change. I didn't see it as a mechanical event. I saw it as an athletic event, but instead of a ball or a bat or a stick, it was with pit equipment, tires and lug nuts and the impact guns and so forth.
That's so cool, because when you look at the Wood brothers, they kind of transformed the pit stop from an engineering perspective. They changed the way the jack works. They changed the way that the gas goes into the car. So it's cool to see they did that very early on, and then you coming in and kind of changing the way athletically it was done. And now we just see how athletic all these guys are that are involved in the pit stops.
Sure, and it's important to remember it's not just that they're big, strong guys, but it's this athletic mentality, and I've come to call it over the wall thinking. It's thinking like an athlete. It's the way that successful athletes solve problems, and they do it with practice and repetition, with coaching, with these things that make total common sense in an athletic world. But they're not as easy to find outside of that mentality. So it was about finding people that the athletic, building blocks, those conceptual building blocks were already ingrained as common sense. That's the way they solve problems. The pit stop is, a problem. It's a puzzle, and that's the way we went about solving the different facets of that puzzle.
So you brought all the guys on initially, is that right? For the pit crew?
Well, so from the beginning, there were some crew members that were there, right? We had to do this in stages. It didn't all just start off. The teams were smaller, budgets were smaller, the concept was new. So the first part about it was ideas, athletic types of ideas, practice, coaching, video review, these kinds of things, which again, back wasn't that easy to get the right kind of video equipment. But slowly these camera and things came about and came into the sport. And so it was about utilizing that in an athletic way. Then as we built out the practicing capabilities, training capabilities, right, with like a gym and things like that, scouting and recruiting, right, finding better, we'll call it raw materials, raw human materials to put into that system. That also was something that was added in, but that was all over time.
So these processes of training that you're talking about, from weight rooms, and you almost sound like the GM of a football team right now. So is this training something like we would see that NBA players, NFL players, or college football players, other sports are doing? Is that the type of training that these athletes are now getting?
Oh, it absolutely is. It's year round. It's periodized, which means that there is an in-season, a post-season, and then a preseason component to the training. These are degreed strength and conditioning coaches that conduct the training. We have degreed physical therapists that are there for injury and rehab. We have coaches that have career coaching backgrounds that work with the crew guys, and that's how the teams work now.
Was there also backups in case anybody got injured?
Sure. Well, there's backups as well, and it's funny that it used to be, because right, everything's smaller, so the teams were smaller, the transportation, right, we would have been flying to races now for a long time, but the planes were smaller, not as many seats, so you couldn't have those kinds of we'll call them luxuries. So sometimes if you needed to find if you had an issue on your team, let's say someone that twisted an ankle or something, you'd look and see what teams have fallen out of the race, and you'd go try to get one of the guys to come and help you finish out the race. Like, that was how we did backups a long time ago. But then, yes, as the teams got bigger, budgets got bigger, planes got bigger, more ways to get to the racetrack, then you could go ahead and build in some redundancy, some backups into that plan.
Yeah, and one of the things that, oh, sorry, Bart. One of the things that okay, go ahead.
I was just curious. So when you're at Hendrick, did you have any position or any pit crew position that you had to fill in for?
Well, yeah, there was a couple during my time. I actually got to change tires one time in my career, one pit stop. We just had a tire changer that had a shoulder issue, and we just needed to get the car in and out of the pits. So I jumped out and changed a tire.
Nice.
There you go.
I've jacked. Jacking was my primary. I did that for real. I changed one tire, and then I did also some fueling when there used to be two fuelers, what we call catch can man.
Yeah.
I was the catch can man, and that was for a number of seasons. So those are the three positions that I've done.
And how often and we see today the jockeying of pit crews when it comes to like playoff time. And we, like you've seen when Jimmy Johnson was on a run, they'd pull some of the best tire changers from one of the other Hendrick teams and put them on his car throughout the playoffs. Is that something that you strategize for throughout the year, or is that jockeying going on all year, or is it kind of a one-off situation?
No, it's really a one-off, and that's pretty rare that happens. It always grabs a big headline, which makes it maybe seem like it happens more than it does. But it's pretty rare. Sometimes there'll be changes. Sometimes now, with the playoffs, if there are certain teams in an organization that have dropped out of the playoffs, and there's one team or two teams that are left, and some temporary changes would help fortify those pit crews, then some of those decisions are made. But you really can't plan too much for it, because you just don't know when that situation is going to present itself. And it could be something it could be because of good fortune. If you have all of your teams that remain in, then you really don't have that ability to move people around as you would in a specific situation like the playoffs, where you have let's say one or two teams that are in and one or two that are out. So you just have to wait and see. You just have to wait and see. It's sort of almost like moment by moment.
You said it took a little while to implement your vision of what you saw eventually a pit crew more athletic. How long did it take to really see the time cut down drastically from the things that you've done?
Well, you saw changes immediately, and don't forget. So the thing about NASCAR, the thing about racing and pit stops that makes it different from other sports is we don't survive so much through peak performance. It's not the best person, the quarterback or whatever that might be having a career day that's leading their team to victory. It's really about the weakest link. In a simple pit stop example, if you have 4 crew members that are spot on and do their techniques in 12 seconds, really good by today's standards, and that 5th crew member makes a small mistake, a little bobble, they finish up 2 seconds later in 14 seconds, the stopwatch only records the 14. You can't average it together. You can't rely on the majority, right? The majority did it just right, but the stopwatch only records the slowest. So you're not only looking for gains in time, but you're looking for gains in consistency. And those early days of practice and repetition and, getting it down to very specific movements in a process and reinforcing that process did as much for consistency as it did for speed. It did a lot of great things for speed, but the consistency came with it. You weren't selling out the consistency to make things faster. So it was exponentially better, not just faster.
So at a certain point, other teams had to be catching on to what you guys were doing over at Hendrick. And then what was it like, first of all, when you started this, fighting these teams behind the scenes, and then who became some of your biggest competition quickly?
Sure. So look, since we were the upstarts, we really were focused on becoming other teams' competition. Earnhardt, of course, Dale Earnhardt Sr. was tops in the game. Rusty Wallace, they had a really good pit crew, the 2-car Penske back then. And those were the teams that we were looking towards, not only to compete with on the racetrack, but to compete with in the pits.
And at what point did you find them kind of copying what you were doing?
Well, I think it probably took, so first season was 93. we won the Pit Crew Championship in '94, which was the Unical Pit Championship that was done in Rockingham towards the end of every season. That was the Pit Crew Championship back then. Then we won the team championship in '95. So really, after about 2 seasons competing for a championship, winning a NASCAR championship, and doing it in the dominant style that Jeff was known for, and that the team did between qualifying and practicing and the way we raced, and there were some dominant wins. So it really, because of all those other factors, it really showcased how the pit crew was doing. And the pit crew, we could not only get them to the front, but and the car and Jeff were running up front, we could keep them up front. So all of those factors together, I'd say after about 3 seasons, combined to give our pit crew a really good showcase of what they could do. And then, like everything, it starts off, you do something different, and everybody dismisses it and says, that's not going to work. Then when it starts working, then everybody wants to do it. And so that's when things got started.
So you were a major part of this iconic NASCAR team, the DuPont Rainbow Warriors. Just reflecting on that, what was it like to be such a big part of such a well-known team?
Well, that was really, and I've been with good teams. I mean, back in high school, we were like 11-0, our football team, and we won the state championship and all that sort of thing. But this was in a professional sports environment. This was a dynasty level team, a dynasty level organization. And what's always been interesting to me about that time is how he really, as a not just as a pit crew, but as a team, as the DuPont team led by Ray Everham, we just thought differently. People couldn't understand us. We'd qualify 5th and then finish a race 3rd, and if you walked around in our pits, it would look like somebody just died. And when people are congratulating us, like, hey, nice job, top 3, whatever, you're leading the points. But we had expected to qualify in the top 3 and win the race. So in our minds, we gave a race away. And you're looking at every move, every decision, every sort of twist of fate that works for you or against you towards your ultimate goal of dominating the race, winning races, and winning championships. And it's like the great white shark, right? They just eat. There's no anger. There's no nothing. It's just a voracious appetite. And we just had a voracious appetite. We wanted the next win, the next good performance, the next championship. And it was great. It was very, it was a very centering, kind of very focused way of being when everything you did every single day, every single move at the racetrack, ultimately you felt could make a difference. So you were honed in and focused in, and it was a great time. It was a great time to compete.
Was that always the norm with teams being that hungry, or did Jeff add any sort of atmosphere to the way you guys performed and just were hungry for those wins?
Well, Jeff, as a driver, right. The goal of all of us, the goal of the support people is to put it in the driver's hands, set him up so that he can literally take it to the finish line. And you knew that if you could get Jeff anywhere close to the top of the board, he was going to bring it over the finish line. So it was really, yes. And hopefully that's how some of those other areas felt about us. Like, hey, we don't want a car that's going to back up with a good pit crew that's going to keep popping them forward. We don't want the car to be the weak link. We don't want the engine to be the weak link, and down on horsepower with a great driver and a good pit crew and a great setup. Everybody wanted to do their part to support the other areas of the team because you knew how good they were.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that Earnhardt was one of your all's biggest competitors, and we know that they were intense rivals on the track. It's well documented that these guys would run into each other, spin each other out. My first question is,
well, I don't know if that was unique, like the Intimidator. That's, I think that's how you get the nickname.
Right. But how does that resonate down to you guys at your level? I mean, there were times where Jeff, you would see him just visibly upset about it. And did that translate down to you guys? Like, were you guys ready to run over and whoop their butts just as much as he was?
No, you would always, you're there, you support your driver, you support your teammates, the road crew, and whatever it is, we all supported each other, but that's really for the drivers to handle. Right. So there was no, I mean, I guess, if we got the word or whatever, we would have ran over there, but the word was never given. We were always like, that was never really an option.
Well, and we know that they were kind of business partners on the outside of the track. They were marketing geniuses to begin with. And what was it like to see them have those run-ins on the track, but then be on the hood of the car planning an autograph session or something like that? What was that relationship like for you to see?
Sure. Well, I think great championship stories are built off of great rivalries. And their rivalry, especially with Jeff being the up and comer, then Jeff kind of establishing his place amongst the best drivers of that time. It was great. Like we as a team would watch Earnhardt race, and he would do like there were times I don't even know how the car he was driving was staying together. It'd been wrecked and fenders cut off and it was smoking, and he'd be passing cars out on the racetrack, and we would just shake our heads like this is like you're watching like someone like a magician perform a magic trick, but he was doing it with a race car at 180 miles an hour. It was amazing. A lot of respect, I guess it boils down to just respect, but respect in a competitive way. We wanted to beat him. We wanted to beat everybody. We ended up wanting to beat him more because he was up there running up front more.
Right. For sure.
You worked with so many iconic people within NASCAR who've given a lot to the sport, and they all worked at Hendrick. Names like Chad Knaus, Ray Evernham, Steve Letarte. Is there any good stories that come to mind working with these guys?
Well, and it really is amazing the types of teams and people that have come through that organization, and it certainly starts at the top with Rick Hendrick. That provides, right? It's not getting lucky. It's not, one guy or one driver or one period of time. I mean, heck, at this point now it's going on like 30 years, so it really is, a place where individuals can reach their full potential, and all those names that you mentioned had all of the tools. The drivers, the crew chiefs, the pit crews had all the tools they needed and the latitude to become successful. So the stories that I remember most are great racing stories, great win stories. There were awesome. 2 different times with Jeff that we were, and this is we were 2 laps down at Darlington, and this is before there was no lucky dog. Like if you were a lap down, there were some interesting things, right? You had to race back to the green. Like when the yellow came out, if the leader didn't get it, the race was live. So now there could be like a car that spun out somewhere on the track. The race was live until the leader actually took the yellow. So let's, come up with a scenario where the leader just passes the finish line. Now the caution comes out, okay? The rest of that entire lap is still live until that leader gets back to the start finish, right? So if there's a car that's like spun out, you've got to like get around him and keep going. And there were opportunities to gain positions and get your lap back and then when the leader took that next lap, then, then it was the field was frozen there for everybody. But so we were 2 laps down at Darlington when there was no such thing as a lucky dog. But like I said, these other rules were in effect. And we not only got our 2 laps back, and we were 2 laps down because we'd gotten in some wrecks. The car was damaged. We fixed the car, got our 2 laps back, pitted him up through the field and won the race. And those are probably, because I was there in uniform in the pits, those are probably my best competitive memories. Those races at Darlington where we were laps down and came back and won.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking here, I'm trying to get it in my head how that works out at like Daytona or Talladega when there's the big one on the back stretch and you're letting people race through that thing all the way until the leader passes. You're talking craziness. Yeah,
it was, and that rule again, because there was no lucky dog, so there was no other way. You had to race, you had to get around the leader to get a lap back, and that was the only way to do it. And so, like I said, that was part of the rules package at the time that tried to give those cars that were behind the leader or a lap down, give them a way to get back on the lead lap.
Crazy.
Hmm.
So you were with Hendrick nearly almost 30 years, but you've had other roles outside of Hendrick. You were the former executive director and sit on the board of the North Carolina Motorsports Association. Can you tell us a little bit about this, what they do?
Sure. Well, the North Carolina Motorsports Association and Foundation, so NCMA and CMF, is the trade association for the racing industry in North Carolina. So obviously a lot of NASCAR, but with drag racing and all the other different forms of racing that exist, workforce development, educational programs that have to do with racing. The NCMA is sort of the gathering point and the clearinghouse for all of that sort of industry related activity. So it supports the industry, legislation, public policy, initiatives. I mentioned workforce development, educational programs, scholarships that the foundation gives out, motorsports and engineering related scholarships. So it's the kind of de facto trade association for the industry that's based in North Carolina.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and it was great. So I was executive director for 6 years, and then in 2012, 13, somewhere in there, I was moved off the board, or I was replaced as executive director, and then maintained a position on the board.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And now you mentioned earlier on the over the wall thinking. You still run over the wall thinking that you started back in 2006. What do you all do there?
Right. So that is so similar to when you come in, when I came in from collegiate sports and, brought that mentality to NASCAR. Okay, now we take that athletic mentality, athletic problem solving, that over the wall thinking, and do corporate events, advisories for companies. Companies, right? Everybody wants to be a pit crew. Everybody wants their sales team, their executives, their whatever groups that are interacting, that they want them to perform like a pit crew. Now, which is interesting because sometimes they're a little bit off on their definition because, right, pit crews are not just go and crazy, as I mentioned before. Because of this idea of the stopwatch only recording the mistake, pit crews are also very conservative. So very process oriented, very conservative at times to get those good performances and shore up their weaknesses. So it's basically taking the pit crew mentality and the pit crew focus on process and detail and bringing it into a business environment. So that's keynotes, right? Me up on stage talking about how I snuck into the racetrack and all that kind of stuff, and how things went from the mechanical paradigm to the athletic paradigm with NASCAR pit crews. So paradigm shifts, and then we do team building events where we take groups, sales teams, whatever it is, different parts of organizations, and we have them compete as pit crews, changing tires on a race car. So there's, again,
cool.
yeah, there's process improvement, innovation, all of those things that we have to do. But it's in an experiential format for business environments.
That's really cool. And that's part of the reason we wanted to have you on the show is, Bart and I's careers were not nearly as illustrious as yours in the sports world. They ended with high school soccer, and then it was beer and intramural sports when we went to college together.
Listen, you probably had more fun than I did, I'll tell you that. But,
Hey, well, I would have taken being an O lineman at Stanford over going to Murray State, but it's cool to hear from you and hear how you've translated that thinking, whether it be from winning a championship in high school to all these different things, and bringing it into the sport that we love and we talk about on a weekly basis now. So super cool.
Yeah, well, look, thanks for your interest, really, and through all of that time, there's an element, right? You look back, and now I'm 53, right? So there's not going to be another 28 years. I'll be 81, out there, doing my thing. So hopefully I've gone on to accomplish other things by the time I'm 83. So these chapters are written, as they get written for all of us. And for me, there's always been an element of coaching and teaching and training to everything I've done with, I was a player, so I was the one being coached and being taught. Mm-hmm. And then from sort of, adult life on, whether it's been in the pits or with the educational programs with the NCMA, or what I do on my own with the team building and training and consulting, it's what I love to do, and it's my enjoyment of helping people achieve their goals, helping teams achieve their goals. That's what I love. So I'm fortunate that I've got a number of different ways.
Well, Andy, I know that we have enjoyed this. I know our listeners are going to definitely enjoy this. So thank you so much for spending time with us and telling us your story.
Well, listen, again, thank you so much for your interest. And I hope I hope you can edit me to make it a good segment.
No edits here.